Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, of course, like, subscribe, do all that jazz, rate us, review us, whatever you do on your podcast provider of choice. Do all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. I am your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms. Joining me once again, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, my friend, what is good? What is going on? And I don't even think I got to ask what you've been playing, but just to dot the I's, cross the T's, all that shit. What have you been playing?
Yeah, the ladder has dropped for Diablo 2 Resurrected, and been pretty much just playing that exclusively when I have been playing games. So basically what happens whenever the ladder resets, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's a leaderboard for characters and their XP, and basically the game of the ladder is to try to get as high level as fast as humanly possible for some people. There are guys in the community that are doing level 99 challenge, which basically they're trying to get to level 99 the fastest. Usually, like, depending on how many people are playing, it can take you, I think it took probably me like maybe 6 or so gameplay hours to beat hell mode. Well, probably actually more, because I guess in the ladder there is a caveat. Instead of it just being like normal non-ladder games, the big change whenever you go to ladder is the fact that the enemies actually spawn with like 20% more health by default. So everything's a little bit more difficult in that regard, which is, pretty cool. But also, it kind of resets the market. So after a while, the market for everything kind of slows down because everyone is finding the gear that they want. And there are still things that are going to be worth value. But for all intents and purposes, it's basically a market reset on all the gear and stuff in the game. So for me, I mean, I played through as a sorceress the first time, got to, I think it's a level 86 right now, almost 87. And then wanted to try the new class because with patch 2.14, there was a huge shift in the game and how it was going to be played, because they did a complete and total overhaul of some of the characters and their functions on their skills, and how the damage is actually dealt by certain characters. So there's actually a shift. So I mean, Hammerdins, and if you've played Diablo 2 in the past and you think that there's nothing new to it, I mean, Hammerdins and Blizzard sources are still very good, but they've kind of changed the way that the Fist of Heavens skill worked with Paladins. Before, it was mainly a dueling character that relied mostly on the lightning strike damage whenever you first call down the Fist of Heavens, but they reworked the way that Holy Bolt does damage, so now it's actually a very viable Hell Chaos run, like Chaos Sanctuary runner, because of the way the Holy Bolts do like 1500 damage when it spreads out, so you can really kill demons. The biggest thing with Fist of Heavens is it's not very good against animal types, so like the cow level, you can't clear cow level fast at all, because the only thing that does damage to the cows is your initial lightning strike, and it's a single target attack, so not a whole lot of AoE there. But whenever you're facing demons and undead and things of that nature, there's a ton of damage. They've also reworked the way some of the classes work, like the druid is kind of different. and how it works and the summons work. Like the summon druid's really good now. And they've changed a lot of other things in the game, and they've also added in some rune words. So it has changed it up a little bit. More recently, I'm still playing as my sorceress because I'm still trying to farm gear. But more recently, I was able to get a rush from one of my buddies, Jack, Dr. Prodigy, and we kind of went into the ladder together as a team. We're trying to find some more people that want to do it for like the next ladder reset, because the team of like super good speedrunners, I think they beat Hell Mode, and they beat Hell Mode and slayed the first Uber in like under 3 hours time, which is really fast. So we kind of want to, share our gear and do stuff like that. But, that's down the pipe. It's just been a lot of fun to play the game and try a new character that I have at level 76, the Fist of Heaven's Paladin, and trying to clear Chaos Sanctuary and Hell with him is a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a different play style. It's still somewhat similar to the Hammerden, but it's not quite the same because it works a lot different. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. I've pretty much just been playing Diablo 2 Resurrected. I haven't been playing anything else.
Yeah, it's just it's the crack pipe. It's back, baby.
It'll always be there. Everyone, like, no matter what, like, no matter how long I've been so clean and sober, it's that thing that like always tugs on me, and if I'm not careful, it sneaks up on me. And here we are. It's effectively done that.
Right. So you mentioned this when you were kind of running through the whole spiel of kind of what your mindset is with this game right now and what you're kind of tackling with this game right now. But you are somebody who at one point has dabbled in the speedrun of Diablo 2. Have you thought about doing that with D2 Resurrected at all?
I have a little bit. To be honest, I honestly saw there has been some tweaks to the runs, which makes it a little less RNG based. I think my biggest problem with speedrunning this game in the past was the previous route was heavily dependent on getting certain runes from the Countess and normal. And at least for the Sorceress, I think the Assassin's still pretty similar, but for the Sorceress, they pretty much just skip needing rune words at all, at least for the normal playthrough. So I have definitely considered it. I think for me, what I've really been focusing on, or at least debating recently, obviously with the ladder reset, I haven't quite had the time, but I've actually wanted to get back into Ninja Gaiden speedrunning. So that will probably be the next game that I get back into as far as speedrunning is concerned. But yeah, it's definitely not off the table for me to start getting involved in some Diablo 2 Resurrected speedruns, especially because the way that the game's changed recently, it has changed the runs enough that it's like not the same run as it used to be when everyone was running it. Or everyone's been speedrunning it for a super long time. Yeah. And there are changes to the routes, but it's no longer a stagnant game where like people can only get better at the certain route. It has changed in that regard, which is, really cool to see. Yeah.
And it seems like too, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a lot of RNG that goes into that run at times, right?
Like the speedrun of Diablo 2 Resurrected has a ton of RNG in it, specifically because you have to rely on certain runes to drop from normal Countess, and there isn't a whole lot of, it's not necessarily rare for them to drop, but there are times where like it's just completely out of your hand and there's nothing you can do.
Right.
So that kind of thing is a little bit of a bummer.
Right, yeah. I remember watching not only you attempt to speedrun with that, but also a couple other people and whatnot. And one of the things that instantly, I remember you getting to one point of that game, and I haven't played the game in so long. I bought D2 Resurrected, have yet to actually sit down and play through it, but haven't played through Diablo 2 in a long time. But I remember you getting to a certain point and you just being like, well, that didn't hit, so this run's ruined. Like, I'm just going to quit.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There's a part where you do Countess runs to level up, but you also try to find the rune word Stealth, which is Tal Eth, which gives you 25% faster run walk, 25% faster cast rate, and it also gives you regenerate mana and stamina. So it basically makes you move faster, and there's like no way that you can really do the speed run for any semblance of like a reasonable time than by having that. And if you don't get those rune words, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can definitely see how that'd be a little frustrating relying on that. But on my end, in terms of what I've been playing, I talked about it really quick last week. I wrapped up my Fallout 3 replay, at least of the main quest. I'll probably go back and do some various side stuff in there. And I always forget when I'm playing through that, like, because I'm so used to Bethesda games. Really, I mean, realistically, since Oblivion, having so many factional quest lines and whatnot, that Fallout 3 just did not have that at all. And it just throws me off every time I play through that. I'm like expecting to go, okay, I'm gonna, go run through with Brotherhood of Steel, or go and run through with, the Enclave or whoever, and it doesn't really have a lot of that. So it was weird going through that and being like, that's right. This just kind of not doesn't end, but it's like there's side stuff that you could do, but this is very much a more centered, singular approach on the player compared to the whole, like, involving yourself in the world, I guess. But I talked about it last week. It's crazy to me that how well that game has held up over time. Like, sure, same with Oblivion, there's some, you could definitely see the edges and the rust that is built up on that game a little bit, but the depth of that game is still there, and I think the world is still great, and sure, the art, the art style and, graphically, that game hasn't held up as much as, we all probably would have liked it to or look at, but at the same time, too, to me, that doesn't necessarily get in the way of what I find enjoyment out of the game, it being this living, breathing world, and the interconnectivity of all the factions, and with the main quest line and whatnot. Like, those reasons why I like that game, to me, make it feel like it's not it doesn't feel, the age isn't as much when I'm playing it in 2022, 2021, whatever. Fallout 3, even more so, I feel, was really at that point, not that Bethesda was just like, hey, we can't be touched right now, but I think the writing in that game is so unbelievably just unscathed over the past, almost 15 years now since that game's been out, 14 years. Like, it's just crazy to me how well that game, from a writing standpoint, a dialogue standpoint, it has just, it hasn't aged a day. I mean, it really, it's, I think Fallout, the one thing that I do tend to like, the one thing in Fallout I do tend to like more than Elder Scrolls, because it's very much one of those things, like, and Mike, I know you're the same way, because you kind of lie in the same camp as I do, and Adam's on the opposite side of this. We all love the mainline Bethesda titles, the Bethesda Game Studios titles of Fallout, Elder Scrolls. Like, we like them both a lot, but we definitely, like you and I, more Elder Scrolls fans compared to Adam, who is more a Fallout. Like, there's usually one that you do have to, like, it's almost like Kill Your Babies. Like, yeah, I do like this one, but this is my favorite child, like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I always have liked a little bit more in Fallout, just because I think that it's much more obviously evident and on the nose in Fallout, is just the satirical humor that's found in that game. And then that series, just in general. I mean, all of it, for the most part, is just, it's so heavy-handed in a lot of times, but it's so just, it fits, but yet it's so abrasive against the world. It's that the writing takes itself at a glass half full approach almost at times, and it just really, I think, it has aged so well over time comparative to, and maybe I've always thought, like, oh, I kind of mentioned this last week too, like, Fallout 4 has been so much closer in my kind of scope of recent years than Fallout 3, just because of kind of the issues that come along with Fallout 3 with playing it up until recently on PC, or even once it got added to backwards compatibility and whatnot, it was a lot easier, but there was a lot more hurdles to kind of climb over with that, to play it on PC with games Windows Live and all that shit. So Fallout 4 was always, if I wanted to get my fix and it wasn't New Vegas, I'll play Fallout 4. But, I guess I had looked back on it as, oh yeah, Fallout 3, great, don't get me wrong, love it, but, I think people have very rose-tinted glasses with this game when they look back on it, just because of what Fallout 4 kind of came out and was. But going back and replaying it for the first time in a long time, it did hit me of like, you know what, this is... People were right. Like, I was definitely... My mindset was very wrong on this. But outside of that, I started playing Dishonored 2 again. It's the one thing that I've noticed, Mike, my mind in this point, unless there's one big game or something like that comes out, I always tend to make, and I think it's just with my work schedule and kind of the craziness of work dying down for at least the next couple months, that I'm able to go back and kind of, this is my backlog time. Where, like, I find, unless there's a big game that comes out or something like that, we get an Elden Ring that pops up or, you know, whatever. You know, it's usually this time of year is my backlog time. That time where I'm, like, thinking about, oh, yeah, I should either go back and replay that, or, oh, I need to get around to playing that, or I missed it at launch, or yada yada. And I love Dishonored. Love Dishonored 1, especially. Dishonored 2 got into a couple years ago after kind of sleeping on it a little bit, but got into it, kind of fell off a little bit, not because I didn't like it, but just other games came out, and you know how it is. But kind of had that little bit of an itch just because I'm on a Bethesda kick yet again. So I was like, you know what? I kind of am in the mood for an Arcane style immersive sim. Like, you know what? I'm going to go back and actually just restart Dishonored 2, play through that. Been having a great time with that. I think the thing I love about Arcane's games, and really, I guess, Dishonored in general, is that no matter how the approach to design within that game is so immaculate that, and same with Dishonored 1, but Dishonored 2, they flesh it out so much more, that any way you approach the game is the right way. And I think that is one of the ultimate, like, they're one of the ultimate developers when it comes to pretty much giving you the keys to the car. Go ahead, you know, gas tank's filled up, you figure out, all you got to do is make sure you get to, you know, point A to point B. I don't give a fuck how you get there. And I think a lot of people look at this now from a design end, whenever they are looking at either whether it's roguelites, whether it's just immersive sims in general, that kind of give you the open-endedness of how to tackle different things, or even just quest design in general with games that are either open world or, you know, kind of not linearly the linearity of the game isn't necessarily straightforward, like you find in a lot of, you know, RPGs and things like that. I think just the way this game approaches a lot of things is kind of used as that to point to and say, okay, look at how Arcane did this with Dishonored, and Dishonored 2 specifically. So I've been having a great time going back and doing that. There's a couple other games on my docket that I'm kind of like eventually going to play after this, because we're going to have a little time before like the next big release comes out. So it's going to be nice. I kind of want to go through and do like a full like Arkham playthrough again, like Asylum City and Night. I also kind of want to play Doom Eternal yet again, just because I've been getting the itch, and I recently re-listened to the interview that Hugo Martin, the game director of Doom Eternal and creative director of Doom 2016, did with NoClip. It's really good. I highly suggest anything Danny O'Dwyer does with NoClip is incredible, but go over there and listen to that. Just him talking about the game, like, and just when I think of Doom, it just gets me in one of those moods, and I'm just like, nothing else will scratch that itch unless I'm playing Doom. So kind of one of those moods that I'm like, and at the same time, there's only so many hours in the day, and I got to narrow shit down at least a little bit. But and then Molly and I are kind of dipping it in and out of a couple of things. We started up BioShock just because she wanted to play something that had a little more narrative impact, and I'm always down to play BioShock, so I wasn't necessarily like, she wasn't twisting my arm too much. So, but outside of that, that's pretty much it on my end, though. But Mike, we got a topic that
you're not going to play Halo Infinite Season 2? You know, all the fixes that were done on that?
You know, I was going to let you go. Like, I had it listed on the docket on, like, my at least from my, metaphorical docket that I kind of keep in my head of like, oh yeah, I definitely want to talk about this on the show this week, this. I had it on there. I mean, I had it on there. But you know what? I thought, Mike wasn't on the show last week. I'm sure he's got, a lot of stuff he wants to talk about. I'm sure he, just wants to shoot the shit. He's probably want to just, hey, we want to keep it a light and jolly mood. I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to bring it up. But, now that since you just kind of shot yourself in the foot, I am going to bring it up. Before we get into the big show, or the big topic of the show, yes, Halo Infinite's newest season, Season 2, Lone Wolves, is out now. You can go in and play it if you want. Mike, do you plan on jumping in and checking this out at all?
I don't know. It's funny.
That's more than I thought. That's more of an answer than I thought. I'll be quite honest.
I will say it's installed because a league that we signed up for a long time ago, like when the game was still new and relevant, a league that we joined is concluding eventually at some point, and we have gotten to the point where we're supposed to finish that. I don't know. I was contacted by someone I was teaming with in the qualifiers before Kansas City. This would have been like just post Raleigh, and it's hilarious because she actually said like, what's hilarious? In the middle of a tournament. So this is like middle of a Face-It tournament, in the heat of the battle, like in the heat of competition. I literally was just like, in the middle of a fucking series, I literally verbatim was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to compete anymore. I'm not having any fun. And this is like before we got eliminated. And then after we got eliminated, I literally like never got back on the game. And she was literally like, it's literally stuff of legends. You said, I'm not having fun. I'm not going to play anymore. And then you just literally never got back on. And then I told my buddy Derek, incessant, like I sent him a screenshot of the message and was like, look what I got. And he was laughing because he said the exact same thing. He's like, people usually be like, oh, I'm not playing anymore, and they're just like having a pissy fit, like whatever. It's not usually like they don't usually hold themselves to it. But he's like, no, you literally just up and quit. And it's funny because I was thinking like literally, I did the exact same thing with Halo Reach. I did the exact same thing with Halo 4 and Halo 5. I did the same thing with Elden Ring to an extent. Not that I was like done competing, but like there are literally times where I will just be done with a game and I'm literally done with it. Yeah. And I will never play it again.
Fallout 4?
And it's not that I like, especially with like Elden Ring, it's not that I didn't like it. It's just, I'm done. Like I've gotten my fun out of it. It's a challenge. I had a lot of fun, but it's time to move on with my life. Now there's other games like Diablo 2 that I will never have that happen. And hopefully, going down the road, if Halo Infinite
you will never break my heart.
if Halo Infinite can get fixed up and working, then maybe. I would like to go to Orlando and compete and drink and see all my friends again because, it's just, it'll be a good time. It'll be in September or whatever. It'll be a decent time to go down there. But, yeah, I mean, all the updates, all the notes that I've seen from people are pretty disappointing. Not only because they've nerfed some of the movement and things of that nature. So they nerfed like when you jump, like if you're sprinting, jump full sprint.
Oh, I saw. I did see Jack talking about that in your Twitch chat the other day.
Yep, and like it's fine or whatever, but they didn't do much else to fix. Like they didn't fix any of the other issues or bugs, and then they just added in. If I like remember correctly, there's like a weird issue right now where the battle rifle just won't shoot. So you just sit there and shoot blanks. And it actually happened to me in the qualifier tournament that I literally said I'm done playing. I dropped the oddball. We were playing on recharge and I was in elevator and I dropped the oddball because we were being pushed across the mid bridges, and the team calculated a push. And I needed to drop the ball to help my teammates to try to keep control. And like I shot at a guy 3 times who was already weak, and like it just looked like I did absolutely no damage. Like his shields didn't light up, nothing happened. But on my side, the shots like went out, and then my teammate was like, he's like, on my screen you didn't even shoot, because I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that guy literally just took no damage, and he's like, yeah, like on my screen you just didn't even shoot, and I was like, what? So we went back and watched the film from my point of view. The shots shot but didn't hit him. From his point of view with the film, like my shots didn't hit at all, or my shots didn't shoot at all. So like that's just like in a nutshell how bad the desync really is.
Right.
And it's also part of the like that's not the only reason why I didn't want to play anymore. Like playing Bazaar repeatedly and it's not even good. Recharge isn't a good map. Like there's a lot of reasons why I didn't want to play. But yeah, maybe if they start to address some of those things that are, you know, causing serious issues, then I'll get back into it. And I might get back into it for Orlando, but if I do, it'll probably be on a super like casual method.
Yeah.
But when I compete, I usually can't take it half-assed. I usually am either full bore or not, and I decided I didn't want to just be half-assing it, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, true. And it's funny, like, I was thinking about it actually today. I stopped at the store, at the grocery store on the way home to get dog food and stuff from work, and I was even thinking about it too. When I was kind of going through and doing the docket in my mind, I'm like, you know, maybe I should at least hop on and like check out the battle pass, see what it looks like, see what's on there, yada yada. And then like I thought about it, and you know me, I'm much more for when it comes to, I don't want to say forgiving, but I'm much more lenient when it comes to, even though I do like playing competitively and whatnot, like I'm a little more open to, if I see that there's noticeable change happening and noticeable like effort being put into addressing some of the things within the game and whatnot. But realistically, since this game's release, we haven't seen that personally, at least from a standpoint that I feel that's acceptable for what this product is and how long the development's been, and, you know, comparative to other games of service titles that had a similar launch and whatnot like that. But I was thinking about it, I was like, when would the next time I get on to play this game? And honestly, like, because I thought about, do I want to jump on for the battle pass or whatnot, yada yada. And then I thought, from that perspective, I thought about it, and the one thing that came to mind was, you know what? And I don't know what made me think of this. I think because I was like, well, I do have the Mark V helmet that I did want, that I got from the battle pass, like the traditional Master Chief helmet. I was like, I like playing. I like, even with customization, I'll do whatever else on my Spartan, but I do like wearing the Mark V helmet. I was like, I got that from the battle pass last time. I finished the battle pass last time. Like, you know, I have what I need out of that. And then I thought, I'm like, you know what? This is the game that requires you, or this is the game that doesn't let you at least have whatever base color you want for your armor, without either, not even paying for it, but just pretty much straight RNG on whenever the store's going to have it available, or what you can grind 100 hours for to get through with the battle pass with. That I was like, there's no reason for me to invest in that. Like, there really isn't, from just a casual perspective. You know, like the idea of Last Spartan Standing, it sounds fun. At the same time, though, you and I and Adam, we've all played Danger Zone on CS:GO. Like, it's very similar to that in a stance. And that had its, you know, that had some, you know, some things decent about it, but definitely had a lot of its flaws that, you know, if you're going to do a battle royale, like, if you're going to do something like that, they need to just do a full battle royale with the game, not just kind of, that's clearly what some people have been asking for, but it's also, you know, if you're going to take an attempt at that, like, don't do, you know, 12 people. You're going to need to do, and that probably also goes with the, you know, they don't have a map the size that they would need to do that. Given it being an arena shooter, you know, at most you got a big team battle map, but, you know, that's about it. And that kind of goes back to, this game launched with only a handful of maps, and it still only has a handful of maps after adding 2 more. That it's, you know, it's just, it disappoints me in a lot of ways, but the more I kind of saw what you were saying when you brought up, you know, some of your issues that you were having before the game even launched, and some of the things that the more I'm kind of seeing, like, I've kind of been like, you know what, he definitely wasn't wrong by any means, you know. But the one thing, though, that I did think about when I was sure, like, when am I ever going to come back to this game? Like, when outside of, like, hey, we fixed X, Y, and Z, we're doing this, like, full-featured, like, big things, you know, yeah, that'll make me come back, obviously. Because I want this franchise to just fucking succeed so bad. But probably the next time I come back to this game is probably co-op. Like, co-op, maybe Forge. And we don't, and truly, I mean, that stuff's gotten bumped back. Like, even if they're not officially saying it, it's gotten bumped back. So, who knows? Who really, like, I really don't see when I'll probably come back to this game. I haven't played since February 3rd, so just looking at it right now as I was pulling up, like, kind of the checklist, looking through the actual update. But, anywho, I didn't think we'd bring it up this week, but here we go, you know?
It's not a week of Game Pass without me shitting on Halo Infinite.
No, absolutely not. Anyways, though, let's talk about something fun, Mike. I brought it up last week while you were gone. I said I didn't want to really touch on it too much, just when I was kind of shouting into the void and kind of talking my thoughts through on everything for gaming that week. But we did get confirmation. I wanted to wait and have you on so we can kind of digest it ourselves and kind of, not that we're shocked by any means of this happening, because we fully expected it to happen, but now that we kind of have confirmation when it is and whatnot, a little over a month from now, and it was announced last Thursday, Microsoft, I guess, if you want to say, Microsoft announced that they will be doing yet another Xbox and Bethesda game showcase. It's coming June 12th. I got a write-up here from Michael McWeirter over on Polygon, as always, link in the description to kind of set the stage, and we'll get into it. But Xbox Game Studios and Bethesda Softworks will hold their annual gaming showcase, which is typically aligned with E3 in June, on Sunday, June 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, Microsoft announced last Thursday. The live stream show promises to feature, quote, amazing titles coming from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, and our partners around the world, Microsoft said in a statement. The Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase will cover games coming to Xbox and PC platforms, including releases for Game Pass for Xbox and PC. The show will be streamed on Xbox's YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok channels. That's kind of interesting. Viewers should expect at least two Bethesda games to show up during the event. Bethesda's Game Studios Starfield and Arcane Studios Redfall, both of which are slated for release in 2022. On the Xbox Game Studios side, there are many announced, but still undated games that could appear, including Obsidian's Entertainment's Avowed, Rare's Everwild, Avalanche Studios' Contraband, Playground Games' Fable, The Initiative's Perfect Dark, Ninja Theory's Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Undead Labs' State of Decay 3, and Obsidian's The Outer Worlds 2. So, not that I think either of us are shocked by any stretch of the imagination that shocker, Bethesda is going to be having Xbox and Bethesda are going to be doing another showcase. Before we kind of get into the games and kind of what we expect, what we're hoping, yada yada, all that, one thing that I kind of want to get your take on, Mike, and I kind of brought it up last week and didn't want to get into it too much, but at least wanted to bring it up, that for the second year in a row, Xbox is approaching this event, or realistically, this is their E3 briefing without E3 being there. But Xbox is, for their event this summer, they're once again aligning Bethesda with them, not within them. And this is the Xbox and Bethesda game showcase for the second year in a row. What do you kind of make of that? Given, hey, this is... Oh, no, you're good. I was just going to say, given this is the fact that, hey, we're now... The ink is well and dry, and, Bethesda is fully under Microsoft's ownership now at this point. Last year was a little different. The ink was still drying, kind of metaphorically, that, it's early in this new deal that's officially done now, but we're over and done with now. Bethesda has now been under Microsoft's wing for quite a while. Do you think this does stay long-term like this for the foreseeable future, when Xbox does have or Microsoft in general, I guess, when they do talk video games, they're going to kind of keep these two entities still kind of separate compared to, well, yes, technically they're all under the Xbox Game Studios banner. Clearly, this seems to be at least a sticking point for right now with ZeniMax and the deal that included Bethesda. This seemed to be a sticking point for them, that they kind of wanted this to, we kind of want to still have not independence, but kind of that self-centered, not self-centered. That's kind of negative to look at it that way, but their own identity still a little bit. What do you kind of think about all of
it? I look at it from a lens of, it's just probably good business to behave like this and to treat something or someone or an entity that you acquired like. I think it's super smart business for Microsoft to behave this way, because quite frankly, in the future, let's say that they want to make another purchase, and say they want to purchase, I don't know, someone like Bungie, who, kind of got out from underneath the shadow of Microsoft, I guess you could say. I look at it as like, they wanted to go their own way and make their own game, which, all intents and purposes, I was sad to see Bungie go. Not that, Halo Reach was the best thing I've ever played, but, look at comparison to my favorite franchise to when Bungie had it versus 343. Mm-hmm. It's obviously, light and day. And I think, it's a really good idea to treat your business. I don't know that I would call them partners, but to treat someone or something that you purchased in this manner, that you're giving them this type of respect, because it looks good to other companies. Let's say, obviously I don't think this would ever happen because they're just huge on their own and they obviously don't need it. But even a company like, let's say, and this is going like way wacky, this isn't like me predicting anything, but let's say like a company like Bandai Namco. Let's say that for whatever reason, they want to align with Microsoft for whatever reason. And if they were to want to do that, it's because Microsoft has proven with Bethesda, or is proving with Bethesda that they'll let you do your own thing, even if, they've purchased you. And I think that's kind of, there's a caveat with that, that like, it has to be a certain like caliber of design studio. Like, you're not going to come in as like an indie design development studio and just get the keys of the kingdom and just run it however you see fit. But like, established studios like Bethesda, who probably really didn't need to partner with Microsoft, but I mean, if they're throwing that kind of money at you, what can you really say? A company like Bandai Namco, again, probably not, I would say won't happen, but crazier things have happened before. EA Sports, whatever. Whenever they see how good that Microsoft is taking care of Bethesda, that doesn't hurt your chances of absorbing a company like that. So I think like, point blank, it's just smart business first and foremost. Secondly, from a fan's point of view, it really excites me because there are a lot of things about Microsoft that could be concerning, and rightfully so. Look at 343's handling of the Halo franchise in general. And again, not to keep shitting on them, but obviously there's some room to grow there. Right. I don't know. Something else that comes to mind is like the Gears of War franchise. Now, again, I don't have a educated guess or educated opinion on how Gears 5 was, campaign-wise, that is. I did play the multiplayer. I thought it was a Gears game. But I think, what's interesting to me the most about Halo and Gears is the gameplay stays really good. But it has a shelf life. It always kind of did, but it's not the years of old that people are just playing arena shooters all day, every day with their friends. People want to have a little bit more of a casual experience, and I don't think that you're getting that so much with something like Halo Infinite and Gears of War right now. And not saying that like Gears is dead in the water, but even something like Gears is just like, it's okay, right? Like, it's not good, it's not great, it's just, it is what it is. When before, like, Gears and Halo would be the gold standard. So the fact that Microsoft isn't necessarily meddling too much in Bethesda's business is really encouraging to me. And if I was like a CEO of a studio, it doesn't even have to be Bandai Namco. Think of someone like, Ubisoft. God knows they could use some guidance for what they're doing. But I still think like even a company as big as Ubisoft, Microsoft wouldn't be quick to like want to take over the reins and make every decision for Ubisoft. That's something that they would probably still leave up to Ubisoft. And I think again that just is really good for everyone involved because it just shows good faith, it shows good business ethics, and it shows a good partnership between two, big players in the gaming landscape that together will probably achieve some things that separate they definitely wouldn't have. So hopefully this leads to more partnerships down the line for Microsoft, because it's looking like a absolute win-win for Bethesda. It has yet to be seen like what the return is to Microsoft, and you probably will truly never actually see that in ink right in front of you. You'll never actually see those types of numbers that easily. I mean, if you dug around and found it, you definitely could. But I mean, I would say that because Microsoft is allowing Bethesda to do their own thing, they either A, really like what Starfield is going to look like or is looking like. B, they already have made a ton of money off of Bethesda games. Or C, they like what they see from Bethesda is in regards to Starfield, but they also like what they see from Bethesda in regards to what they have planned for Elder Scrolls 6. So that's what I would think from my outside lens, with a objective lens, not so much a Bethesda or Microsoft fanboy lens, just a straight up like this is what just kind of makes business sense to me.
Right. Yeah. And I'm right there with you that this clearly was, and we've kind of talked about this before, and even too, I mentioned last week on the show, I remember when at one point, I think when it did come out last year, that they were doing this kind of co-branded conference that I believe it was Jeff Grubb tweeted about it, or he talked about it on Grub Snacks. I can't remember which one it was, but him saying like, this is probably going to be at least for the next couple years, like this year, next year, maybe 2023, 2024, we see it go to just Xbox Game Studios, something like that, and then focus on Bethesda within it. But clearly this is kind of, when you look at it, it clearly was a sticking point for ZeniMax whenever they were looking to be acquired by Microsoft. That they've always seemed to want to have their independence. That's always been something that was very, you hear it a lot in interviews with Todd Howard and with where he's talked about, one of the nice things was for, a long time they were, up until, very, very, very recently, they were a privately owned company. They didn't have shareholders to answer to, but they were putting out games and publishing games akin to, on the level that was akin to that of a major AAA publisher. So they kind of had a little bit of best of both worlds. But clearly it seemed to have made sense with them to be acquired by Microsoft. That they clearly saw something in it at that point that, hey, this is the right move for it. So clearly that form of kind of having that identity still and having them be identifiable not just as an Xbox game studio, which, who knows, we may see that with Activision whenever Activision eventually is fully within the confines of Xbox game studios. So who knows, we may end up seeing and I could see it potentially even going like, Microsoft holds their gaming conference, and it is, the Microsoft gaming conference. We're going to hear from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, and Activision Blizzard, or, whoever. So, to me, that I think it shows faith on both sides of the partnership, and I do see this more as not like you were saying, not necessarily, hey, we're coming in and buying you, you're our dog now, kind of thing. No, it's more of, hey, we like what you've been doing. We've worked together for a long time. We want to help. We see the vision that you guys have for whether it's Starfield, whether it's Elder Scrolls 6, the future of Fallout, whatever. we see what you guys have and what you guys want to do. We can help you get that from our technology, from our standpoint, from a technology standpoint, financial standpoint, whatever you need. We're able to do that. Why don't we just make it official, kind of thing? And I think that seems more along the lines of this, and we're going to kind of see that, I think, long term. But I thought it was interesting that we are kind of seeing come to fruition what Jeff had mentioned last year of, hey, this is going to be a thing for at least a couple years, which makes sense because I could definitely see them rebranding just the Microsoft gaming division, and right now it's just being viewed as, all Xbox and whatnot. But I think as the Xbox brand becomes more of an ecosystem, and I think as Microsoft kind of solidifies itself more and more every year as this kind of renaissance figure after, the rocky launch of the Xbox One and the generation previous, and seeing all of the good press, goodwill go into Microsoft right now, hopefully that, on all sides, it doesn't matter just not Microsoft and Nintendo, PlayStation, PC gaming, whatever, like you want to see all of them succeed, it's hopefully going to help carry that over, that Microsoft just kind of has their gaming division and people understand that when they hear Microsoft, it is akin with, Xbox, Bethesda, Blizzard, Activision, these names in gaming that they just know it's Microsoft. So where that kind of gives everyone their independence, that feel of self-identification still. So I was just curious what kind of you thought about all that, but enough talk about the business shit. Fuck that. Let's talk games. Let's talk good games. So obviously the article over at Polygon kind of mentioned a little bit of that, saying like, a couple of the big hitters, but I kind of wanted to run through a little bit. And we can even kind of view this as, and not necessarily spending too much time on each one, but just kind of looking at what each studio, kind of running through the studios, going down the list, and kind of seeing what really they're at, or where their studios are at within Xbox Game Studios, what they're kind of working on, and what we kind of expect. Because there was word that came out, and one other thing, actually, before we get into that, one other thing I did want to mention, because this kind of came out hot off the presses, because we're recording a little bit earlier in the week, but it was announced that Embracer Group, they would be buying Crystal Dynamics, the Tomb Raider IP, who else was it? Pretty much all of Square's Western studios, they were going to be buying, and Square Enix was selling them for, I think it was like $300 million, like not that much money in the grand scheme of things, for what you would akin relative to that. Before we kind of get into that end of Xbox and their first party studios and whatnot, do you think we see any kind of either, acquisitions? You see any kind of potential third-party partnerships with any kind of exclusivity? Just kind of whenever I was thinking about the Square Enix news, it kind of made me think about that typically we've kind of seen that back off a little bit outside of, hey, we're bringing the show to Game Pass and we're partnering with EA Play and, Ubisoft and whatnot. But do you imagine seeing anything from an actual game release from a third party that we see maybe it's timed exclusivity, a partnership of some sort, come out of this year's showcase?
I think it's a possibility, only specifically because I feel like because Sony's still doing it. But then again, Microsoft has pretty much, at least within recent years, really honed in and tried to focus on being like the gamers' place to play games kind of thing. Like the cool kids, like, oh, this is where we take care of gamers, and like all that cool, like hip lingo talk that they say about like gamers and the fans of video games. So I don't think, because it just feels a little off-brand at this point in time. Now, if they did it, would I be shocked? I don't think anyone could really be. I would be surprised, though, just because of the fact that they have just tried to be, like, the shining spot in gaming for so long when it comes to, like, basically not making their games exclusive, or at least timing it to where it comes out on PC at the same time. So I think it'll be interesting to see if that continues, for sure. Because... I think they might realize they kind of are leaving some money out on the table, or at least they're leaving some, chances out there to really, I don't know if twist the knife is really the term that I would use, but at least to really capitalize on that timed exclusivity to try to push console sales. But I think the biggest problem right now, at least to Microsoft, is they don't necessarily want to make their games exclusive, in my opinion, because it's still relatively hard to get the new generation of consoles, unfortunately. And I don't think that's good for business whenever you're having a shortage like that. There's already a heightened amount of demand because the supply is so low, which is just like macroeconomics 101. If there's no supply, the demand's automatically going to be high. If there's
except if you're in the stock market. Except if you're in the stock market and there's manipulation, but that's a side note.
They play by completely different rules.
Right,
In
yeah.
fact, I don't even think there are no rules. And if there is, they're not properly policed.
It's called crime.
But in regards to this, I just think it would just be so off-brand for Microsoft to, hold something behind on an exclusivity deal. Now, could something from like a third-party, smaller development studio come out to say Game Pass first? Yeah, I would see that happening. But as far as like a big time first party like AAA exclusive or timed exclusive, that's just not going to happen. And I don't even think Starfield will do that. I know we kind of have differing opinions on that, but I really don't think Starfield's going to have timed exclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's already obviously been confirmed, like, hey, this is going to be PC and Xbox exclusive, but yeah, I don't see it at this point now, like, after a year or something like that, coming out saying, hey, we're going to bring it to Sony or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But, yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp as you. I think in terms of we're not going to see necessarily from an acquisition standpoint anything really until the Activision Blizzard era is kind of, that whole deal is kind of solidified and done and the bow's on it, everything's good to go, ink's dry kind of thing. I don't think we'll see anything in regards to potentially even any other acquisitions, future acquisitions until that's done, because that's such a monster deal at almost $70 billion. Like, there's going to be investigations with that and whatnot just to kind of get everything buttoned up and whatnot. So I don't see anything on that regard outside of the, hey, we're bringing this to Game Pass, yada, yada, like that, or maybe a day one third party release on Game Pass might be in the future, with the cards or whatnot. So who knows? But I will be interested to see, if anything like that kind of comes out of it. But anywho, wanted to get your opinion on that too, Mike. But let's kind of jump into it. Let's kind of run through just where we kind of are right now with Xbox and its studios and what they're kind of bringing to the table heading into this showcase and where kind of we're at. So obviously 343, everything's out in terms of Halo Infinite, well, everything that they could release. Do you think kind of one thing looking at this, you kind of mentioned 343, and I'll even throw the Coalition in there too, because they're the next one I was going to bring up. Do we see a date for really co-op or Forge, if any of those have flipped or not? Do we see a date for that at the showcase? And speaking of the Coalition, do we get kind of a hint of Gears 6? Do we get anything Gears related or really anything from the Coalition this year?
I think I think so. I think you're going to get some news from the Coalition, even if it's just a little trailer, kind of, similar to what Bethesda did with Elder Scrolls 6. Which, like, for the most part, it's really done a good job at quieting me personally down, because I was one of those people that was like, calm the fuck on, Bethesda, get your shit together. Stop making fucking Fallout games. Like, we get it. Fallout games are cool, but let's get it together.
Yeah.
Like, you can't leave us on the lurch with what you released as far as Skyrim's concerned. So they finally came out with just even a little teaser, and it really shut everyone up. I don't know that the Gears community is really in that place, to be honest. But for me, it's like one of those things where I like Gears of War multiplayer, and I do like the campaign too. I always thought the campaign was maybe underrated, believe it or not, back in the day, which I don't even know if that's possible.
Yeah.
So I would be excited for some fresh Gears of War content, personally. But at the same time, it's like, what'll actually happen with that is up in the air. I just know that they're going to at least tease something.
Yeah, I think the Coalition's been so active with the technology with Unreal 5 and working with Epic to kind of promote that and show what they're able to do with that tech. They've been one of the staples in any kind of big, communication or showcase from Epic with Unreal. They've been there for the most part, showing off, hey, this is what this is kind of concept of what we can do with environments, with the metahuman character creation that we could do and work with in the models with that, and some of the cinematics as well. They most recently showed. I think that isn't all for naught. I think that's obviously clearly this is going towards Gear 6 or whatever else might be coming down the pipeline, because I've heard there might be some more RTS, like an RTS project potentially in the works outside of Gears Tactics, obviously, but from the Coalition actually. I've heard that there's another project in the works, so we may see something like that kind of is a bridge game to eventually get us to Gear 6, whether it's in the Gears proper universe or not. But I think we do get an actual tease of Gear 6. I think we're going to be at this point coming up on the 3rd anniversary of Gears 5. I think that is potentially long enough to at least hear that. I mean, everyone already knows, hey, we're working on the next entry of Gears of War. That'd be dumb not to think that they're at least doing that to some degree. But for a lot of studios, especially of that size and whatnot, even if it isn't, hey, we're fully in, we're in actual production by the time their next project wraps, we're seeing pre-production being done on many games for the next entry, while the other one's getting wrapped up with development. So I would be very surprised if we don't see at least a hint of Gear 6 this year from the Coalition. Kind of moving down the list, Double Fine just releasing Psychonauts 2 next year. I don't think really anything, because they're such a smaller studio, that we really will see anything outside of anything, maybe DLC wise for Psychonauts 2. But next on the list, The Initiative, though, they've kind of had a little bit of kind of topsy-turvy a little bit with the development of Perfect Dark from what we've known, bringing in Crystal Dynamics to help with development, and kind of, from what it sounds like, a little bit of rocky development in general, with some departures from their studio, from executive levels and whatnot. Do you think this year, given everything that's kind of going on right now, do you think we potentially is this a year we see gameplay from them with Perfect Dark? Maybe not a, hey, this is coming in 2023 kind of thing. I don't necessarily think we get a date, but do you think this is the year we at least get a nice good look at this game for what the fuck it actually is, when we hear I think it was like eco espionage, action or something like that. I can't remember how exactly they described it when they revealed it, but do you think we actually get a look at what their take is going to be on Perfect Dark this year? Or are we going to kind of sit on this a little bit longer, considering they may have rebooted some of development?
Yeah, I think, if they have anything ready to go to show, we'll see that. I think you'd be a little remiss to not think that would be, probably going to happen, right? But as far as all the turnover that they've had at their studio, I think you'd be probably a little bit hopeful to think that you're going to get, an actual gameplay and a date. You're going to get some gameplay, maybe if it's it'll probably be a little bit in engine, you know what I mean? But it's not going to be, what some fans are potentially clamoring for, because it's a long way away.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, because I think whether you take the idea of, hey, this is a full-on reboot of development that we're seeing for this game, from, obviously if sources are correct, and obviously we've seen some turnover and whatnot. We're talking about a studio that was homegrown. This is a grassroots studio for Microsoft. This isn't, hey, we're acquiring the studio that's been up and running for 10 years. Hey, we're acquiring this studio that's already has a couple games under their belt that they've put out and had success and whatnot. This is a studio that is being built from the ground up to make, really what they've always said is quadruple A exclusives for Xbox. Really, realistically, to match Sony's output of, hey, Uncharted, hey, Last of Us, hey, God of War, like that level of narrative exclusive that we traditionally see from Sony and that they've had so much success with, that this was built for that. And even being announced in 2018, that's still quite a while, or that's still, 4 years coming up on that. You're talking hiring, you're talking then going from hiring for at least a full year into pre-production for at least probably a full year, working on an engine, working up a prototype, then getting into full development. I mean, this is probably, if everything's going smoothly, probably the year that you actually maybe show a gameplay demo, maybe. I definitely think we see something. I think they need to kind of get out in front of the narrative a little bit with what's going on with Perfect Dark and so many people being in the dark, coming out, no pun intended, coming out and saying like, hey, we're partnering with Crystal Dynamics, and that kind of throwing people off. And now obviously the rumors with, the game being somewhat rebooted, to a degree, some elements of the game, I don't think fully rebooted, but, some elements of the game kind of going back to the drawing board a little bit. I think they need to control the narrative a little bit. And I think this is the year that they could potentially do that by coming out and at least showing something, showing the idea, give us that slice of gameplay, give us that kind of look into this game to see what just the basis in the ideas around this game is. Give us a proof of concept, I guess. Kind of looking through here, I want to kind of group a couple together. We're, I guess, really kind of pairing with that a little bit, that we potentially have heard from games that are, hey, this is actually happening. We have no release date, no gameplay footage, no nothing. I'm looking at Obsidian with Avowed. Also, too, if you want to throw in the Outer Worlds, too. But I very much think that is still in pre-production, and we won't see really anything from that. We may, who the hell knows, but I think that one's more of a long shot, because they have Avowed coming out, their RPG that is basically Don't Call Me Elder Scrolls, but is Elder Scrolls before they bought Bethesda, that is in the Pillars of Eternity universe, but Avowed that we haven't seen anything from yet besides the teaser trailer, and also Playground Games Fable reboot. Which one do you think we are more likely to see, Mike? Do you think we're going to see... I think we have a chance to obviously see both this year, but do you think we see potentially... Which one do you think, I guess, is more likely to be farther down the pipeline to say, we feel more confident bringing this out and this being the right time to show it? Avowed, the RPG from Obsidian, or the reboot of Fable from Playground Games that really outside of that quick CG trailer, we have nothing to go on.
Yeah, it's it's definitely interesting because I kind of forgot. Kind of forgot that they were kind of building out an Elder Scrolls game to try to answer Sony. Before they bought Bethesda. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that. It is quite kind of something to be thinking about. I hope for their sake that they have something in the pipe kind of ready to go, because there is so much happening. There are so many games coming out, and I can understand that they might be afraid to get lost in the shuffle a little bit. I just hope that they don't overthink it and think that because all these awesome games are out, or because Microsoft has Bethesda, now they have to do something totally wacky and crazy to get people's attention. Just make it I think a lot of development studios are overthinking it a lot of the time. in all honesty, while having, super crazy cool new effects or engine mechanics in games seems to be something that a lot of people want to go for. I think, in today's day and age, right now at least, I feel like simple's better. In a game that really, has caught a lot of shit from us for good reason, in my opinion, for a while, is a game like Fortnite where, for all intents and purposes, do I like BR games? Not necessarily. But they went ahead and they removed the building, and it's just such a simple change. I don't know how hard they had to work to make the simple change, but the slide mechanic, the clamber mechanic, all of it is just so clean and polished. And that
Completely
is something that I think is being lost in translation. And it's not even just it's not even, studios like 343 or Activision that are having these issues. It's honestly like, it's a lot of studios are going above and beyond. I mean, look how flat CD Projekt Red came out with Cyberpunk. And yeah, they had some wacky, cool installments and changes that were done on the engine, but look how bad the game performed because of it. And I think that for all intents and purposes, a lot or a little in terms of, changing the world when it comes to engines and things of that nature, and having a really good, story driven game goes a long way. And I think a game like Elden Ring, which is still mechanically and engine wise really deep and interesting, but look how good that game did and how difficult that game is. I think whenever a studio, like this kind of goes in that direction and keeps it simple, you're doing the right thing. And bringing on Crystal Dynamics to work on it, which, for all intents and purposes, for what I've experienced from Crystal Dynamics, I've been really, pleasantly surprised. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if they did the Warcraft 3 remake, but as far as like Diablo 2 remastered and their assistance with that, I'm pretty sure they assisted with D2 Resurrected, and they also like helped Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. And if you played the old Tony Hawks and haven't played the remastered version, you're missing out because the games are just so clean and polished compared to the way they felt like wonky and wacky on the N64. Like the games are just so clean and smooth, and it's really made me want a Tony Hawk's Underground really badly. So I think like while people have the right to be a little concerned because they're like, oh my god, they've had to bring on another studio for consultation to get this game launched. Crystal Dynamics, from what I've seen, is a quality studio, and I think if they weren't heading in the right direction previously, they will be now, hopefully. You know what I mean? Of course, I could be wrong, and Crystal Dynamics could miss, but for all intents and purposes, everything that they've touched that I've played has seemed, really good.
Yeah, and I mean, as somebody who's just gone back and started replaying through the Tomb Raider games earlier this year, like, the polish that they have with those games and the tech that they bring to those games, I think is really going to be, if they have any kind of expertise with that they're bringing to bring along to Perfect Dark, I think should be a no-brainer. It should be, I personally think, like I said, that'll be their ability to control the narrative this year to come out and show this. While you were talking, I thought I did hear this, thinking about Jeff Grubb earlier. He did mention on the Xbox Era podcast back in March that he did expect kind of this year to be at the showcase, to be obviously focused on Starfield, Redfall, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then finally getting a good look at Forza Motorsport.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
I was incorrect. I was thinking about Vicarious Visions, not Crystal Dynamics. I'm sorry, I got those two mixed up.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
But,
which technically is now going to be an Xbox game studio, so they're in the fucking mix too now.
Yeah, but with Crystal Dynamics, I'm sorry, they did the Tomb Raider games. They've done such a great job with them with the Tomb Raider games. I don't know that you could really go wrong with bringing on that team to help you reach the finish line, or from what it sounds like, kind of maybe restart the race if you know what I mean. Yeah,
no, definitely. And then looking at Fable and looking at Avowed, like I was saying, though, Jeff did mention earlier this year, back in March, that probably, quote unquote, probably that we're going to see both Avowed and Perfect Dark next year, potentially. And that was, I think, post, hey, word going out that this development might be a little bit rocky on Perfect Dark. But it seems like Avowed is a little bit further along than what a lot of people think. And even hearing about that, and that was before Jeff making those comments, that I've even heard that potentially this game is in a state where it is very much playable. It's not obviously finished playable to any degree like that, but in a state where they're getting through the game for the most part in a playable fashion, that now they're kind of going through and tweaking and everything on that regard, that I wouldn't be surprised necessarily. I wouldn't be shocked for sure if we do see something from both of them. I think maybe Avowed before Fable, because I still think Fable is a little bit further off than what some people think. I think that might be a 2024 game, because I think that Playground was still very much in the hiring phase when that game was announced. They were still building up, still very much in the midst of building up their staff to develop for that game. So I think it is still very much obviously in proper development, but I think Avowed's a little bit further on down the road. To kind of wrap it up, Mike, let's head into the Bethesda side here and just kind of look at, we obviously know Starfield's going to be the big game this year. That's going to be, from what we know at least right now of announced games and whatnot, that is Microsoft's crown jewel this year. That is their game of the year right now or I shouldn't say that. That is their big game of the year that they are coming out with, that's at least announced right now. For 2022, that is. But kind of looking at the rest of Bethesda and their pockets of studios, one, do you think we'll see anything else from, I personally don't. Do you think we'll see anything else from Bethesda Game Studios? Whether we're talking anything from Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout, anything like that. Do you think we'll see anything remotely at all saying, hey, yes, we're working, this is, Starfield's coming out, this is our big one, this is coming out this year, we're excited to talk about that, but also just to keep in mind, this is what's next, here's a little snippet of, in-game or in-engine footage from the Elder Scrolls 6 or something like that. I don't think so. I think very much so the message is going to be Starfield and nothing else from that sect of Bethesda, but what do you kind of think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think, like, I kind of agree with you there that they probably won't be doing anything to kind of undermine what they're looking to, release with Starfield. Mm-hmm. I just think that you're doing a little bit of I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. You're maybe shooting yourself a little bit in the foot if you were to undermine, what you've been working on with something like that. Because to a lot of people, they might actually, a lot of people might just be looking forward to Elder Scrolls and not paying attention to Starfield at all. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's a reasonable... I guess it could be reasonable. I guess anyone could really say, oh no, that's reasonable to think that way. Yeah. I guess you could.
But anything could happen. I mean, as we've seen with a lot of stuff, anything could fucking happen. But go ahead.
I'm just hoping that, I think, they might show us a little bit about Elder Scrolls, but it's not going to be a complete and total symposium of what's coming from Elder Scrolls.
No, absolutely
even
not.
If it was just something like showing us 15 seconds of in-engine footage or something,
right,
that would be, more than enough for a lot of people, myself included. And not that Bethesda owes me anything,
right?
But I think that would do enough where you wouldn't really undermine the message you're trying to push with Starfield and how great that game's going to be. Mm-hmm. But you still give people that are excited for the next thing coming. Mm-hmm. You at least give whet their taste buds a little bit.
No, definitely. How about this? How about this? Do you think the phrase Elder Scrolls is mentioned during Bethesda's portion of the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if it's just a a troll. I would actually
Right, or
probably
just
put the
in-
over-under at like 2.5.
or just in passing, anything like that. I think we do get a mention of at least an acknowledgement of at least the Elder Scrolls in some fashion. Whether I don't think it will be with Elder Scrolls 6 or anything like that, but I think we do hear Elder Scrolls and Fallout involved at least at some point. The other big game that we mentioned too, Redfall from Arcane, the vampire hunting game that was the one more thing at last year's Xbox showcase at E3. Not a lot is known about this game, and we really, for a game that's coming out in 2022, has a 2022 date on it, still has a 2022 date on it, supposedly, that we really haven't heard much from this game at all. Do you think this is something we could potentially see bumped, Mike, to 2023 to even be like, hey, this is going to be our Q1 game that comes out and kind of dominates the word of mouth of that time frame, that Christmas hangover game that comes out that kind of gets people, reinvigorated post-holiday season of video games and kind of gets that out of the way of Starfield, because we haven't really seen gameplay for this game at all. Like, that usually, for a game that's coming out this soon, we've kind of seen that is potentially a bad sign. What do you think? Do you think this is something that potentially gets bumped to next year?
Yeah, you could go at it with like a complete and total Shadow-esque drop if you really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily. I don't know that I would want to go by that business model, but there are studios that have super good luck, with that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see it being pushed. I don't know, especially with COVID and everything in today's day and age. I just don't think rushing games ever gets you anywhere. It never really has.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been games that have been rushed that have wound up good? Look at Halo 2.
Mm-hmm.
Halo 2, by all intents and purposes, needed a complete engine rebuild like within a year of release, and they got it all done.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't think, there's a lot more examples of games that were rushed and turned into pig shit than
Mm-hmm.
wound up as gold. So I think pushing it is probably the smartest thing you could really do. Because from Microsoft's point of view, what are you really in a hurry for at this point? Like, you already know you have some bangers coming out. Do you want to get content out? Sure. But again, you're still having supply chain issues, as everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that there's really a rush to like hurry up and get stuff out there when people might not even be able to consume it.
Right.
And at some point, we got to stop developing games for the Xbox One, because that's literally like could be single-handedly what destroyed Halo Infinite, and nobody's talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to stop supporting the older generation, especially like the OG Xbox One. Like, I'm not trying to gatekeep anyone, but at some point, when is it costing you too much? Halo Infinite might be a game that like there's just no reason that it should be designed to run on the original Xbox One, like the VCR one. There's just not. I get that you want everyone to be able to play it, but how bad did you screw the game up trying to do that?
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. But, and I guess finally looking at it from the outside, the only real game that we know of for right now that is coming from really, I guess, any other Bethesda studio that we know was announced, everything like that, would be Indiana Jones. Yeah, Indiana Jones from Machine Games. That's the only one that we have concrete evidence that, hey, this is coming out, this is an actual thing, with Todd Howard being an executive producer with it, and obviously Machine Games, the crew over in Europe that was doing Wolfenstein. So coming from them, we have no idea when this game's coming out, outside of literally all we know is basically we got a trailer that was very akin to the Elder Scrolls 6 when the teaser came out for that was all but a just quick After Effects, like, quick snippet of, hey, here's a JPEG of the title, or of, the Indiana Jones logo, this is what we're doing. And Machine Games is doing it. Do you think we hear anything from this at all? And I'm going to throw you one in there just to kind of button up the show a little bit. What do you think we hear from first? This Indiana Jones game, anything from id Software, obviously Doom and Doom Eternal coming out, and Doom Eternal coming out now 2 years ago, having a little bit of time in between there. Or do we hear something? Or do we hear something from Tango Gameworks, the developer behind Ghostwire Tokyo, and then obviously The Evil Within before that? What do you think we hear from first? Do you think we hear from Tango, id, or Machine Games, if they're working on, obviously, Indiana Jones, obviously, but even Wolfenstein? What's going on with that?
I honestly think you'll hear from both id and Machine Games, because with the move of like enemy territory in those games to Steam, I don't know that the timing was really random for that.
Right.
It could have been. Is it like the second fiscal calendar? I don't run according to fiscal calendars anymore.
I can't remember exactly. Now that aligned with, to a degree, of, hey, we're shutting the Bethesda launcher down and we're moving everything to Steam. But at the same time too, they're also giving stuff away for free with that, and they're also at the same time giving very specific things away for free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess
like Enemy Territory is a very specific game. Wolfenstein is a very specific. Well, it's a very specific franchise to kind of target. When you could be like, hey, we're giving everybody a copy of Oblivion or Morrowind or something like that, that like are well-known games that a ton of people have already. But Wolfenstein is very much a niche franchise in 2022. Still, great franchise, but a niche one that they're giving away something for free that is from that franchise. Like, I'm agreeing with you that I wouldn't be shocked if we don't hear from Machine Games. Like, that is kind of a nod to keep an eye on the franchise that is associated with them. Like, maybe there is something coming. But no, I didn't mean to cut you off, though.
You're good. No, I think we'll get it from Machine Games and ID, honestly. From both. And I don't think it's going to be anything like... it's not going to be anything major. It's just going to be like a little teaser, like something silly, just to get people talking about something again.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I think there's the potential to hear from id, to see what they're working on next. Whether it's Doom related, whether it's, you know, something else completely different, who the fuck knows, man. And I think we at least maybe see a proof of concept for the Indiana Jones game. This is a game that, from interviews that we've heard from Todd Howard, that this is an idea for a game, Indiana Jones game, that he's had in his mind for a long time. He's not obviously developing it hands-on, but and he's even said in his executive producer position, he is very much, hey, I'm just checking in on it every now and then. I'm throwing my 2 cents in kind of thing, but not having that actual game director hands-on feel that he's having with like a Starfield, Elder Scrolls, something like that. But this is a game he said he's had the concept for a long time, that is thought out, obviously, and, you know, has a little bit more depth to it because it's been around for so long. And now, you know, finding the team at Machine Games who latched onto it are saying, yeah, well, that we'd love to make something like that. You know, working with Disney to get the IP now to be able to, or license the IP to be able to do that. You know, it seems like, and as somebody who loves Machine Games and the titles they put out, they know how to do set pieces really well. So I'm really excited to see that translate over to Indiana Jones. But I definitely could see us at least getting that, but I would not be shocked if we hear from id. Like, I think it's very much possible we hear something from id saying, hey, we've been working on, you know, this is what the future of Doom looks like. Here's a snippet of, you know, maybe that's the one more thing for this year. Like, hey, whatever's next from id with Doom, because we heard about Doom Eternal 2 years after Doom 2016 came out. So who knows? Stranger things have happened. But outside of that,
Speaking of,
go ahead.
that show is going to be coming out soon.
Very soon, this month. Yeah. And then I kept thinking for some reason that this season was the last one, knowing they were splitting it into 2 parts to tell it. But when I was, I don't know why I was thinking that, but we're going to have another season next year of it. So we don't have to bust out the tissues yet on it. We still got a little time for this thing, but I'm so glad.
I already had a Sunset Ozark.
Right. Yeah. And that's a show I need to get back into. I only watched a handful of episodes, but
it's so good.
I know. I need to get in on it, but Anywho, Mike, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. So why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet? Talk about all we talked about, the upcoming Xbox Game Showcase, naturally Halo Infinite, and whatever the hell's going on with that. Where can people find you online to talk about all this?
You can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier. Recently I've been streaming here and there, just streaming like farming, gear in Diablo 2, so if that's not your thing, I understand. But I do seriously want to get back into speedrunning a little bit, so keep an eye out for that. Or you can find me where the Bluebird sings, at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, but the second O is an X.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including at Traveless_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me, you can do so at pretty much every platform, but specifically Xbox Live at just regular old Traveless. That's TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and of course PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes each and every Friday when they drop on YouTube. Friday morning when they drop on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, and review us wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast to stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. And Mike, that being said, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.